You can freely criticise the actions of this government, or indeed any government. That is a fundamental democratic right. But no, you cannot use that as an excuse to call for the eradication of a state or any kind of hatred or anti-Semitism. This week, I've met with senior police officers and made clear it is the public's expectation that they will not merely manage these protests, but police them. And I say this to the police: we will back you.
Freedom of speech is a foundation of democratic societies. It allows citizens to express their views, criticise their governments, and engage in open debates on various issues. However, this right has limits, especially when it comes to inciting hatred or calling for the eradication of a state. This principle is particularly relevant when it comes to recent protests and government actions in the UK. The UK government has started deporting the individuals who are threatening the security and peace of the country. So what's next? Let's dive in and explore. The current UK government, led by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, has taken a strong stance against disruptive protests and has implemented controversial policies regarding asylum seekers. The Prime Minister's recent declaration of a crackdown on pro-Palestinian protests and other demonstrations perceived as anti-Semitic or promoting hatred has sparked significant debate and criticism. Rishi Sunak's government has faced numerous protests, particularly from pro-Palestinian groups. These protests have sometimes led to clashes with police and disruptions in public order. The government's response has been to increase police presence at these demonstrations and to issue warnings about the consequences of inciting hatred. In a recent statement, the Prime Minister emphasised the importance of managing these protests effectively. He assured the police that the government would support them in taking action against those who cross the line from peaceful protest to incitement of hatred. This approach has been controversial, with critics arguing that it may suppress legitimate expressions of dissent and advocacy for Palestinian rights. One of the most contentious issues in the current political landscape is the government's Rwanda plan, which involves deporting asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing. This policy has been met with significant opposition from human rights groups, refugee advocates, and the public. Asylum seekers are required to report to immigration centres regularly, but there have been instances where individuals, upon reporting for their routine check-ins, have been detained unexpectedly and told they would be deported to Rwanda. This has caused widespread fear and uncertainty among asylum seekers. Many are now too frightened to attend their required appointments, leading to a situation is unable to locate a significant number of individuals who are slated for removal.
In all situations, we reiterate that seeking asylum is a fundamental human right, and access to asylum for those in need is paramount. And any person who claims to have a well-founded fear of being persecuted in their country of origin should have access to safe territory and have this claim assessed before being subject to deportation or removal.
Protests against the Rwanda plan have been particularly intense. Activists and supporters have tried to block immigration vans and disrupt the deportation process. These protests have highlighted the deep divisions in public opinion regarding the treatment of asylum seekers and the government's immigration policies. One notable case involved a Syrian man named Mohammed who shared his experience of being detained and threatened with deportation to Rwanda. His story reflects the broader concerns of many asylum seekers who fear for their safety and future under this policy. The UK's approach to managing protests and implementing its immigration policies raises important questions about the balance between free speech and maintaining public order. While the government has a duty to protect its citizens and uphold the rule of law, it must also ensure that it does not infringe on fundamental democratic rights. The recent, large-scale pro-Palestinian demonstrations in London illustrate the challenges faced by law enforcement. The police have to navigate the fine line between allowing free speech and preventing incitement to hatred. The arrest of individuals suspected of promoting terrorism or inciting violence is a contentious issue, as it can be perceived as a crackdown on legitimate dissent. The government's tough stance on protests and immigration is part of a broader political strategy aimed at addressing public concerns about illegal migration and national security. Rishi Sunak has made stopping illegal boat crossings and ending illegal migration key components of his policy agenda. This approach has been praised by some for its firm stance, but criticised by others for its potential human rights implications.
Back in the U.S. tonight, here in New York City, authorities are describing that chilling anti-Semitic scene on the subway. Protesters asking, quote, Zionists to raise their hands and get off the train. Authorities say others defacing the home of a museum director who is Jewish. And tonight, the New York City mayor's warning about this hate. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, this video shows a frightening moment on a New York City subway car when protesters demanded riders raise their hands if they're Zionists.
Raise your hands if you're a Zionist!
Raise your hands if you're a Zionist!
This is your chance to get out!
This is your chance to get out!
Okay, no Zionists, we're good.
The train held at Union Square for a police inspection. Officers in riot gear seen on the crowded platform. Protesters clashing with police. They had just come from a rally where the flags of terror groups Hamas and Hezbollah were waved, and others saying, "Long live October 7th." Protesters breaking through barriers, setting off smoke bombs and flares outside an exhibit remembering the victims of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. The Monday incident, part of an escalating series of provocations that go beyond protest and into what Mayor Eric Adams has called overt, unacceptable anti-Semitism.
I thought it was despicable.
The tragedy in the English Channel, where 5 migrants, including a young girl, died, indicates the urgency and complexity of addressing illegal migration. The government's focus on deterrence, exemplified by the Rwanda policy, aims to prevent such tragedies by discouraging dangerous journeys. However, this strategy has significant moral and ethical implications that continue to fuel public debate.
Celebrating as they head towards Britain, nearly 60 migrants on an inflatable dinghy with chaos and tragedy in their wake. Many were not meant to be on this boat. We're told dozens rushed aboard at the last moment, like these men in blue jackets, hijacking the boat, pushing the number to 112 passengers. It was too much, and when the boat hit a sandbar, people fell in, and a major rescue operation was triggered. Most were saved, but 5 died, 3 men, a woman, and a small girl. For Sandrine, the grief was personal. She recognized the child who died, knew her family.
I saw them bringing in the bodies on stretchers, and I saw the little girl who I knew. Her father fell into my arms, and I said to myself, this can't be possible. She's a child. They tried to resuscitate her. The helicopters arrived, but she died. And then there were 4 other bodies.
Abandoned on the promenade, the soaking clothes of those who perished.
112 migrants, c'est du jamais vu. Donc il y a eu
International figures such as the Irish Foreign Minister Michael Martin have criticised the UK's Rwanda policy, arguing that it may be driving migrants to seek refuge in other countries. This international dimension adds another layer of complexity to the issue, highlighting the need for coordinated and humane approaches to migration at a global level. Rishi Sunak's response to international criticism, he argues that the deterrent effect of the Rwanda policy is already evident as potential migrants reconsider their decisions based on the likelihood of being sent to Rwanda. This perspective aligns with the government's and decisive action to protect national borders and reduce illegal migration. The current situation in the UK, marked by intense protests, controversial immigration policies, and debates about free speech, reflects the broader challenges faced by democratic societies in balancing individual rights and public order. While the government's actions aim to address pressing issues like illegal migration and public safety, they also raise important questions about the limits of free speech and the treatment of vulnerable populations. As the government continues to implement its policies and respond to public and international criticism, it will need to navigate these complex issues carefully, ensuring that the rights of individuals are protected while maintaining public order and security are a testament to the vibrancy of democratic engagement and the importance of upholding fundamental rights in the face of challenging circumstances. The tension surrounding the UK government's immigration policies and the Rwanda plan remains high. Public opinion is deeply divided, with some supporting the government's efforts to curb illegal migration and others condemning the measures as inhumane and counterproductive. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is steadfast in his approach, believing that a strong stance on illegal immigration is necessary to protect the country's borders and maintain order. He insists that the Rwanda policy is a deterrent that will ultimately reduce the number of migrants attempting dangerous crossings. However, the policy's implementation has been fraught with challenges, as demonstrated by the chaotic scenes at immigration centres and the widespread protests. Protesters argue that the government's actions are unjust and disproportionately target vulnerable individuals who are seeking refuge from war and persecution. The stories of asylum seekers like Mohammed highlight the human cost of the policy. These individuals often face traumatic journeys to reach safety, only to find themselves caught in a system that treats them as criminals rather than victims in need of protection. The controversy extends beyond the streets and into the political arena. Opposition parties and human rights organisations have criticised the government for its handling of the immigration crisis. They argue that the focus should be on creating a fair and humane asylum system rather than outsourcing the problem to other countries. The Rwanda plan, in their view, does not address the root causes of migration and instead shifts the burden onto a nation with its own challenges. Internationally, the UK's approach has also raised eyebrows. Other countries are watching closely to see how the policy unfolds, with some considering similar measures. However, the ethical implications and potential legal challenges associated with deporting asylum seekers to third countries remain contentious. Within the UK, the protests show no signs of abating. Demonstrators continue to take to the streets, demanding that the government halt its deportation plans and adopt more compassionate immigration policies. The tension between maintaining public order and respecting the right to protest is a constant challenge for the police, who must navigate complex legal and ethical terrain. As the government pushes forward with its plans, it faces increasing scrutiny from both the public and the media. Reports of detainees being held without clear information about their fate only add to the sense of urgency and injustice felt by many. The government's assurances that it is acting within the law and in the country's best interest do little to quell the fears and anger of those affected. The situation remains fluid, with new developments occurring regularly. The government's commitment to its policies suggests that further confrontations are likely, both in the courts and on the streets. The debate over immigration and asylum is far from over, and the coming months will be critical in determining the future of the UK's approach to these issues. So what are your thoughts on this situation? Tell us in the comments below and subscribe for more content like this.